Chuck Ochelli.
Second hour of the Ochelli Effect begins now, originating from Ochelli.com, but also heard in a variety of other places. Greetings especially to our friends over in the land of scholars and saints, which is the nicest and most neutral way I can describe one of my ancestrally tripping over my tongue, sorry. Ancestrally connected homelands. Ireland, cause, you know, I'm not only Sicilian, I'm Irish. Good combination, eh? Anyway, Sicilian and Irish, and yeah, I know, but let's not go there. Fact is that we are broadcasting live over in Ireland. We are being heard in Scotland. We are being heard in various places on the planet live, but of course, a lot of you will pick this up via the podcast later on, and we do appreciate all of you. Jordan Maxwell is with me. I am certainly taking questions both in the chat room at Ochelli.com, which is a live chat room. You can interact over there. Hopefully you behave well and you stick to the subject matter. Do appreciate any questions entered there, or on Twitter. I've apparently invited people to do that, and I'm getting a lot of commentary and a few questions over there, so please continue to do so. I will add them into the conversation as they are appropriate. Now, why is it that I'm doing that? Because Jordan Maxwell, and by the way, JordanMaxwellShow.com is his website. It is the only website that is actually Jordan Maxwell's. You can see his name used in a lot of places. You see his name used to sell products and so on and so forth, and there are people making money, but it's not Jordan. And he's not making the money. Just so you know that. The only website that is his. The only website where you make a contribution and it goes to him. The only website where you're actually interacting with him is JordanMaxwellShow.com, which also has a research society connected to it. You click a button over there. You can join the Jordan Maxwell Research Society for a one-time fee and become a lifetime member and get deeply into all of the subjects which are being covered tonight and a lot more. But that journey begins at JordanMaxwellShow.com. So, all of that out of the way, we're certainly discussing Easter. We're discussing some of the events that are apparently unfolding as we speak on the planet, where I find it metaphorically interesting that apparently the Al-Aqsa Mosque is on fire and the Cathedral at Notre Dame. Okay, I'm not sure exactly if that's the correct pronunciation, but I think it's close. I don't quite do the nasally French thing, which is a requirement when you speak it, but you get the point. Anyway, this is going on, plus a lot of other things, and it is that season, the holiday season, so to speak, but this is for Easter. And, well, a lot of things are happening, and we started talking about that to begin with. So, Jordan, before we get started again, I'm going to bring in a couple of questions here. One of them is about what you're seeing and the symbolism in it, which is also connected to another question. So we'll just put it all together. Super Trader asks about the rituals. Super Trader is a Twitter handle, by the way. Super Trader asks, do you believe that the practice of magic by the elites and people in the Pentagon has something to do with them attempting to contact dark entities to achieve their goals? Now, I reworded that question a little bit because it was a little choppy the way it was worded, but effectively, the people in power, are they utilizing black magic, and magic with a K, by the way, in order to attempt to achieve their goals? Do you think that that is a reality, first of all? And next, in that symbology, in that symbolic ritualism that takes place, another question is here regarding the numbers, and do you think it is a mistake that this is precisely the day that there is a fire in Paris? Does it not seem coincidental that it is, well, you mentioned the same things I do here, and this is Taylor, which I believe Taylor is a female. So the female Taylor asks, do you think that the fact that it is tax day in America, it is the Easter week, it is after Palm Sunday, but before Easter Sunday, that this is all why someone would burn intentionally? And, well, see, intentionally is a tough word, guys. How are Jordan and I to know if something was intentionally done? I wouldn't want to make that accusation, but about the symbolism that's going on, because, first of all, I have no one to accuse, no evidence. But does it hint at? Is it your opinion that it would make sense that this is happening at this time? That if someone did have an intent to make a point, how about that? That they would do it at this particular time. So those two questions I combine, and sorry for the long-windedness there, Jordan, but I wanted to fairly combine the two questions for you and just hand it to you. So go ahead.
I think there's no doubt in my mind whatsoever that the powerful people that run this planet are continually in conversation, working directly with the occult powers. The demonic depravity going on the earth is evidence that there is some sort of an occult secret societies that are continually trying to monitor the powers that be in the spirit world, and Hollywood's making movies about it continually, like The Exorcist, and there's a lot of demonism and devil worship going on around the world, demonism that doesn't even present itself as devil worship. People who actually believe that what they're doing is they're doing something religious, have no idea in the world what they're actually involved in is religions based on the worship of demons and devils and spirits that they cannot see. And since most people can't see spirits, they don't believe they're there and they don't give any credence to it. But the fact of the matter is, the world that we live in is being guided by, and the destiny of the human family is being guided by spiritual entities that we cannot see. And they seem to be very, very evil because of by the fruits you should know them. Look at the fruitage of the spirit world that we live in today, and look at the world that we have to live in, because of it. With the drugs and alcoholism and violence and hatreds and the continuation of selling drugs around the world, all of these big drug companies and big drug dealers in Central and South America with their billions of dollars they're making on illicit drugs. They would not be making that kind of money if it wasn't that America was buying the drugs. We're the ones who are at fault for the drug cartels because we're buying all the drugs from the Medellin cartel, from these Cali, cartels. And so you can't blame them. They're just supplying a demand. But in America, we love the drugs. We're buying them. We can't get enough. We want to mainline. Why? Because Americans have lost their jobs. They've lost their country. They've lost their freedom. They've lost their production capacity. They've lost everything. They've lost their freedom. They've lost everything. And now there's only one thing left to lose, and that's their mind. And now America is in the process of losing its mind. And so, getting back to our subject of astrotheology, the ancient story of the world we live in relation to the heavens above our solar system. The sun is let's start like where we did last time. Let me start over by saying, to understand what's going on right now with our celebrations in the world we live in, just know that the sun in the northern hemisphere on the first day of summer is as high in the northern hemisphere as it's going to go. On the first day of summer, it's not going to go any further north. It's stopped. And that's as high as it's going to go in the northern hemispheres on the first day of summer. So therefore, he's what we call God's son, the light of the world. He is really hot. We say that because he's very, very impressive. He's really hot. But then 90 degrees later on a circle, you count 90 minutes later, or 90 degrees, or 90 days. 90 degrees represents the 90 days. We'll take 3 months, 30 days apiece, and that's 90 degrees, or 90 days later. All right, so 90 days later, the sun that was really hot in summer, he's not that hot anymore. He used to really be hot, but he's not that hot. He's not dead yet, but he's not that hot either. So we say he's fallen. He's fallen from his position as being the Lion of the tribe of Judah, The Lion of the tribe of Judah was the sun in the summer, and the lion, of course, was Taurus. It goes back to the lion was Leo, the lion. The constellation of Leo in the zodiac is the lion of the tribe of Judah, Leo the lion. Why? Because the sun is in the constellation of Leo in the first day of summer. And summer is always associated with the lion of the tribe of Judah. Now, he was very hot in summer, but he's not that hot in the fall. So we say he has fallen a bit. He's fallen. Why? Because 90 degrees or 90 days later, after he's the hottest thing on the earth, he's now not that hot. So we say he has fallen. So we call that beginning, we call it fall. Because fall means the sun was hot, but he's not that hot anymore. So he's fallen. So the symbol for that time of year for fall is the Scorpio, the constellation of Scorpio, the scorpion. And scorpions are backbiters. They're deadly because they're backbiters. And so in the Middle East, when a scorpion bites you, it leaves on your skin a cut, and there's two cuts on your skin. When a scorpion bites you in the Middle East, there's two single cuts on your skin. And those two cuts together look exactly like a pair of human lips. This is why they say when you have been bitten by a scorpion in the Middle East, they just gave you the kiss of death. The scorpions now kissed you off because you're going to die if a scorpion has bitten you in the Middle East and left two holes in your skin that look like two human lips. So there's the kiss of death. And so now we know that God's Son, the light of the world, our risen Savior, he's really hot in summer, but now he's falling. And so now in the autumn, he's falling. And so one of the 12 signs of the zodiac was Scorpio. And Scorpio, if you go back into the ancient records in Christianity, go back to the ancient Vatican records back in the 5th and 6th century, they talk about the 12th apostle, the apostle Judas, represented Scorpio. He was a backbiter. He was a killer. He went behind your back and turned you in. So he was a backbiter. And so he represents the beginning of fall. So therefore, Jesus was the lion of the tribe of Judah. He was really hot for a while until he was betrayed. And so that's why the scripture doesn't say that Jesus was kissed by Judas so that Judas could identify Jesus. No, you don't need to identify Jesus. Everybody in the world knew who he was. Even the Caesars of Rome knew who Jesus was. If he was around at all, everybody would know who he was. And they'd know where he is. So why did Judas go out and kiss Jesus? It doesn't say he kissed him to identify. Everybody knew who he was. He didn't live in a city like Chicago. He just lived in a little small town in the Middle East, we're told. And therefore, there had been no difficulty at all trying to find Jesus. He just lived in a little small town. It'd take you half an hour to walk across town. And Jesus lived there in the Middle East. So therefore, Judas did not kiss Jesus to identify. It says actually in the scripture, Jesus was kissed by Judas to betray him. Not identify, but to betray. Meaning that the sun, who was really hot in summer, has now finally hit fall, and now fall is going to betray God's Son, the light of the world, and he's going to die. He's been given the kiss of death and sent down south. That he is going to die down south in the southern hemisphere. And so to us here in the northern hemisphere, we say that the sun is gone. He's dead to us. He may be helpful to somebody down south, but he's not of any value to us. We're freezing to death up here. And so the sun goes down, and on December 21st, on December 21st, it's the official beginning of winter. So it's called the winter solstice. That's another time. Now winter has begun for us officially on December 21, which means on December 21, down southern hemisphere, officially summer has began for them. But our winter has begun for the northern hemisphere on December 21. And the sun has gone all the way down to the southern hemisphere, and it stops. It doesn't go any lower than the 21st of December. It's called the winter solstice. But the sun was going south, but it stops at December 21 and does not go any further south. And so we say that God's son died for 3 days, because for 3 days, the 22nd, 23rd, and 24th, on December, down south, December 22, 23, and 24, the sun rises on the exact same degree. And it doesn't go any further south. It doesn't come back north either. So for 3 days, it rises in the same place. And so the pendulum has stopped, and now it's getting ready to swing backwards again. But for 3 days it doesn't move, so the ancient people said that the sun was dead for 3 days. He died for 3 days. And if you're down in Rio, if you've ever been down to Brazil and down to South America, you will know that in the southern skies of the earth, in the southern skies down there, on December 24th, 25th, there is a star system in the sky in the south, down there in South America. There's a star system that is exactly an actual cross. It looks precisely like a cross. The stars are placed exactly in a cross. And so the sun is dead now to us up here. Totally, he's gone. So he died on a cross. The cross is called the Southern Cross of the Southern Hemisphere. It's called the Southern Cross. Look it up. It's an actual cross made up of stars. And so we say God's son died on the cross. It's called the Southern Cross constellation. Now,
well, right, Jordan. Now here's the thing. Just really quickly here, you answered Sheila's question before I got a chance to ask it, because she said, "Well, how does this relate to the crucifixion and Jesus dying on the cross?" Literally, that's what she asked a few minutes before you told us. And just little side note, I've been to South America. In fact, I've been to Brazil. I've been to Sao Paulo. Well, quite frankly, Jordan is absolutely accurate with what he's describing. You can observe this very clearly in the heavens, so to speak. So, yeah, that's absolutely correct. I can tell you that from firsthand experience. So, please continue.
So then on December 22nd, 23rd, and 24th, the sun rises on the same identical degree, and the U.S. Navy has instruments that can prove it, that the sun does not move any further south or doesn't head northward. It rises on the same degree for 3 days. So for 3 days, the sun, which has been moving all year long, started back in the summer, and then he fell, and then he's now in December 22nd, 23rd, and 24th is dead for 3 days. Why? Because he's not moving. And then on December 25th, the sun moves 1 degree northward. And like I said, the naval instruments can prove that. The U.S. Navy can show you on their dials that the sun has moved 1 degree northward, which means it is now born again. It has come back to life. It was dead for 3 days. Now the sun has come back to life. And now it will begin its annual journey, working its way back to us in the northern hemisphere. And so as summer begins to die down the southern hemisphere, summer begins to die, the sun is coming back to us in the northern hemisphere. And so the ancient people said, especially in Egypt, that when the sun was on its way back to us for 3 months, that's 90 more days from the first winter, you will hit something called spring, because the sun, which was dead in winter down south, dead to winter, and for us in the northern hemisphere, it's now coming back to us in the northern hemisphere. So we say that the sun is resurrected. He's coming back to life in the northern hemisphere. And so the Hebrews have the celebration of the sun crossing over the equator, which proves it's on its way back to the northern hemisphere. And so they call that celebration of the sun coming back to us to bring life back to the northern hemisphere. The Jews call it the Passover. Why? Because the sun is passing over the equator, coming back to the northern hemisphere, where we were starving and freezing up here in the freezing cold. Thank God, God's Son, the light of the world, our risen Savior, is now coming back to us in the northern hemisphere. And so on that official day, the sun at the equator crosses over our equator, going back north, coming back north to us. The Jews call it the Passover because the sun is passing over the equator. Well, we say the same things. When Grandpa dies, we say he passed on last night, or grandmother passed away, or they passed on, or they passed over. And so therefore they have died from one kind of life and gone to another, so they have passed over. And we say that grandmother passed over last night. Passover means that the sun was dead in winter to us in the northern hemisphere. The sun was dead in winter, but now it's passing over the equator on its way back to us, thank God. And so the sun that was dead in winter has now sprung back to life. It's springing back to life. So we call it spring. Spring is the sun passing over the equator, springing back to life. And so we call that point spring, because now for the next 90 days, the sun is going to travel back to us, and in 90 days it's going to hit the Lion of the tribe of Judah from spring to summer. And now it starts its annual journey back down. It's going to fall in its importance. It's going to fall back down into the southern hemisphere. So the whole story of Jesus in the New Testament is nothing more than telling the old astrological story of the travels of the sun in the sky. He's born in the constellation of Leo, the Lion King. Disney makes a movie about the Lion King. That's the story in the Bible of the sun worship. The sun in the ancient world was called the lion. Why? Because the summer was represented by Leo, the lion, the constellation of Leo, the zodiac. And then when he now is dying, and so now he's being given the kiss of death by Judas, who's giving him the kissing. He's kissing him off. He's going down to Australia. He's going down into the southern hemisphere, and he's going to die. For 3 days he's going to die. And thank God, though, on the 25th of December, he moves 1 degree northward, which thank God that tells us he's not going to stay dead. He's coming back to life. So now he's being born again. And therefore, that's why Christians all over the world worship God's Son, the light of the world, and his resurrection is on December 25th is when he's born. That's why today in the Western world, you see on the day of December 25th, Christians will put on their doors at their homes, Christians will put on their doors Christmas wreath. A wreath is on the door. Why do you have a Christmas wreath? You've seen Christmas wreaths. They're everywhere. They're made out of holly, and they're made out of the wood of a holly tree, made out of Hollywood. They have Christmas wreaths. Right. A wreath in the ancient world always represented a death in the family. And that's why you will see in the national holidays when the president is laying a wreath of roses on a burial, is because a wreath always represented someone has died. Well, God's Son died for 3 days, so that's why you have a Christmas wreath on your door, because God's Son has died. But thank God, The Son has now been resurrected and he comes back to life. He's been born again, and now the Son will slowly but surely over the next 90 days work its way back into the northern hemisphere and officially will cross over the equator, and it's called the crossover. He crosses over the equator, is referred to by the Jews and the ancient peoples as the Passover. The Son has passed over the equator, and now he's coming back to lodge himself into the constellation of Leo, the land of the tribe of Judah, and he's going to be hot again. So that's the story. Now, Here's the point. We are living in a constellational zodiac constellation today of Pisces, the two fish. That's why Christians, you will see on their cars, they see the fish symbol. The Pope wears a Pope's mitre, which is a fish head, because Roman Catholic Church is promoting the worship of a fish god named Dagon, D-A-G-O-N. Dagon was a fish god, and so Jesus is referred to as the great fisherman. And so again, as the sun in the age of Aquarius is going to be the age that the sun is getting ready to go into. This is the dawning of the age of Aquarius. But right now we're in Pisces, and Pisces is the symbol of two fish. And so we're living right now in the age of the two fish, but there's going to come a day, there will come a day for sure, when you're going to officially, on that 24-hour day, you will officially left the age of Pisces, and the next morning will be officially the first day of the age of Aquarius.
Right.
That must happen.
Right,
must happen.
Which we talked about, being about 130 years from now, approximately. I mean, it's
something like that, yeah.
right in about there. And that's the interesting thing too, is you can see it in the symbology, because there's a common appearance of this Jesus fish, I call it, all the time, and you see it on the back of people's cars and sometimes in jewelry and clothing and things like this. And it says Jesus saves, and there's this fish symbol. Well, it does relate to the age, first of all. Secondly, the hints of it are also in the story, because what did Jesus use to feed the masses? 2 fish and 2 loaves of bread, which is interesting too, because, well, if you get into the meaning of the word Bethlehem, this is the house of bread. So, there's a lot of things that cross over. Again, like I said, echoing and continuing to expand this overlapping synchronicity and repetition of the symbols. Now, with that being said, there is a couple of quick questions here I want to get to, because we're in the last half hour already, believe it or not, Jordan. And so I want to enter these, and they may seem a little disconnected, but as per usual, I bring them into the conversation. These might be the last questions of the night, not sure. But here we go. First of all, somebody commented, and it's a long comment, about the fact that my birthday was 8 days ago. And they asked that and by the way, my birthday's fallen on Easter once for some reason that I recall. But anyway, my birthday's April 7th, but that's neither here nor there. Although I have read that some scholars have claimed that the crucifixion of Christ occurred on April 7th. That's and the only odd thing, I don't share a significant birthday with too many interesting people except maybe Alan Dulles. But anyway, what does Jordan think about the significance of birthdays? He's talked a lot about the death of the risen son. What about the birth, and where is that mentioned? That is question number 1. Question number 2, when we boil it down, is about the Pope. Here we go again, because you did mention the Pope just now, talking about the mitre, and we've covered Dagon before. In fact, I gave you guys extra pictures that are renditions of what Dagon might have appeared to be, and to me, he looks a lot like the Kraken or a sea serpent, but anyway, maybe that's got something to do with it. Again, synchronicity between the religions and the pantheons. So, now let's get into this question, which is an ugly question, and I hate even fielding this, but let's do it anyway. Pope Benedict recently came out with a statement regarding the Catholic sex scandal. Well, scandal, you say one? Anyway, I laugh at that. I'm sorry. Catholic sex scandal. Relating it to it being the fault of earlier popes. Pope Francis has made some interesting statements with the burning of Notre Dame, with the burning of Notre Dame and a lot of the things that are happening right now, and the fact that Jordan has mentioned that a lot of big changes and reckonings are going to be had when it comes to organized religion on a previous show. Does Jordan think that that all of this is making sense as it is happening, and does he have anything to say about the fact that one pope is trying to blame another pope, and the current pope is claiming that there's nothing can be done about this, as Chuck noted on an earlier show? Okay, sorry, that's the whole question, Jordan, and I know it's a little choppy, but this is the way they wrote them. So there you go. You have the two questions about the significance of birthdays and the birth of the Son as opposed to the death of the Son. Is there anything that you have to say about that? And also, is there anything you have to say about the Pope's revelations and the current series of events that seems to be unfolding at this particular time that this person also feels that you predicted? So
yeah, well,
right
I'm just telling you that this is exactly what's going to happen, because when you go into a church, into a Christian church today, you will see in mainline Christianity, you will see a man hanging on a cross, supposedly Jesus Christ hanging on the cross. And actual fact of the matter is, no, it's the sun that dies on the cross of the zodiac. It dies on the cross in the southern hemisphere. It's called the Southern Cross constellation. It's one of the constellations in the southern hemisphere. And so you need to understand that, no, what we're talking about is astrology, the astrological outworking of the sun and the planets in our solar system is the basis for the New Testament. The New Testament is nothing more than the astro-theological story, or what we call astrology. That's what it is all telling you all about. God's Son was in heaven. Of course the Son is in heaven, and when you die, you're going to go to heaven with God's Son. No, you're not going to heaven with God's Son. You're going to hell, because hell is Sheol in Hebrew. Hebrew, the word for hell is Sheol, which simply means a grave, period. So if you die, you're going to a grave, whether you're in Sheol according to the Hebrew, and therefore and the word Sheol is translated hell. So therefore you sing, you're now in hell because you're in the grave, period. Doesn't mean you're going to burn forever and all of that. No, it just means you have gone to sleep with your forefathers. You've gone into the world of the other world, and God knows what happens to you. Then I don't know. I suspect there is something on the other side, but I don't know. I haven't been there yet. I'll let you know if I see something. I can come back and tell you. But I haven't been there yet, so I don't know what happens to us when we die. But I'm just telling you what we're experiencing every day. For one thing, there was no man on a cross in early Christianity. For the first 600 years of Christianity, till about the 6th century, there was no man on a cross in any church in the world today. No Christian church had pictures of a man on a cross. Nothing. None of that ever happened. The man on the cross was put there during about the 600th year after Christianity was founded. 600 years later, they decided to put a man on the cross as a symbol for Christianity. Why? It's so that the church fathers felt that it would make Christianity more important to people if they saw a fellow human laying on a cross, dying on a cross. They would feel more compelled to honor the religion if they see a man dying for them. But no, it has nothing to do with a man dying for you. It has to do with the sun giving up its energy. And energy is life, so God's Son is giving his life so that you might live.
Well, let me actually ask you a question of my own here, Jordan. because you say that this was utilized even because the fathers of the church thought it would be a good thing for there to be a man on the cross. And okay, I get that reasoning. But, you know, a lot of these symbols that are taken in by the church that are not even necessarily part of their book, that are not part of their canon, really. A lot of these practices that seem to come out of nowhere. Some of them, I believe, and this is something you can correct me on, but it seems as though they took in some elements of pre-existing religions in order to make their practices appear, well, more familiar to people, I think to make it more acceptable while they were spreading Christianity.
You know that's true. Absolutely true. All the reference books in the world tell you that. All the big, thick reference books in the Bible, seminaries, all tell you that's exactly what happened. That the ancient people, when they were formulating their new religion that they were dreaming up, they accepted some of the customs of the people of that day into their new religion so that the people will be able to relate to it. It won't be a whole totally new kind of religion that nobody wants anything to do with. It has some of the old remnants of the religion that you used to believe.
Well, and see, that's the thing about
therefore, they make it close to what you used to believe. So it's very simple. We just call it Christianity today. But go on and believe the same thing. It all has the same thing.
Right.
And therefore, people will more readily accept this new religion called Christianity.
Well, right. And I think that part of the adaptation of the symbol of the cross had to do with attracting other pagans because various pagan beliefs previous to Christianity had utilized a symbol very similar to what people would recognize today as the Celtic cross.
That's
right?
Exactly right.
And the Celtic cross, yes, there's a lot of symbolism built into that because there's a lot of interesting artwork that is of a particular style, and we see this in places like Ireland and Scotland, prominently displayed as symbols of Christianity. But what they don't recognize is that this pre-existed Christianity. A lot of people don't recognize. I'm not saying you, Jordan, but a lot of people don't recognize that they are literally adhering to older pagan customs by utilizing this very thing. And what were pagans utilizing this symbol for? Exactly the same thing you just explained, which is that they were observers of the sky. They utilized, the zodiac, if you will, in order to understand the world around them. It told them how the seasons were going. It told them what time of year it was so they could plant things or move to a different place or store their food, so on and so forth. There's a very practical reason, not just that it encompassed these elements just randomly, but I mean, there's also practical reasoning behind it. Just like most things, if it serves more than one purpose, it's definitely a whole lot more valuable. So to attract the pagans who had other practices, locally, because there were certain pagan practices that were only localized to particular areas in Europe and in other places. There were literally gods, in quotes, that resided only in a particular swamp, only in a particular forest, only in a particular, and they were thought to be gods by, and pagan, by the way, just so we get very clear on this. When you use the word pagan, in a lot of cases what you're talking about is the common folk, the common
That's
people.
Right.
It is not about evil. It is not about, the demonic.
No. Pagan, it goes back to a word,
right.
And it goes back to the Roman Empire. When Caesar accepted Christianity as a state religion, it became very fashionable that if you wanted to be in with Caesar and you wanted to be in with the in crowd in Rome, then you would accept this new religion that Caesar would now profess to believe, called Christianity, with the cross in the sky and the sun on the cross. And so if you really want to be somebody in government and in Rome, you now accept a new religion because everybody is doing it. Caesar is now proclaiming himself a Christian. So if you got any brains at all and you want to stay in business, you want to be in with the in crowd, then you accept the new religion called Christianity. But in doing so, all of the millions of people in the empire that were out in the hinterlands, out in the other countries around the Mediterranean that were not in Rome, hanging out with Caesar and all the in crowd, they were just called the regular people. The regular people, ordinary people, farmers and people, shoemakers and whatever they were living in the empire, but they weren't part of the in crowd like you were. Right. And so therefore the people on the in crowd, they were the new Christians. Why? Because Caesar is a Christian, and now I'm going to be a Christian because of it. But the people, the regular people, were referred to in Latin as pagans. Pagans simply meant the poor working class people of the countries all around the world. The pagans were just the regular people who were not connected to Caesar and your Roman Empire. They just were the regular farmers and the regular people who lived their regular lives and had their own belief system, and they were called pagans because they weren't like you, a big shot Christian. And so when we say today pagans, it doesn't mean they were evil, bad. No, they're just like you. You would be called a pagan today because you are not in Washington, D.C., hobnobbing around with the president and making the big money and, and being part of the big system that's going on. It's a big system and it's a big club and you ain't in it. So therefore you're just an ordinary working class person. Therefore you're a pagan. That was a Latin word in Rome for an ordinary people, or pagans.
And because you're talking about Rome here, an interesting question popped up, which I will be more than happy to assist you with because I think I know what they're going after. But then again, I probably don't need to assist Jordan. Although Roman history is something I've spent a lot of time on. So it's possible that I might be able to add something to Jordan's answer. Here is the question. It is, let's see, where is it? Right. The first council of Constantinople in 381, wasn't this the place where law was established, in a moral sense in the Roman Empire, and therefore didn't it do some good to use these stories after the Council of Nicaea? Okay, that is the whole question. But I have something to say about law and Romans' concept of moral or law that you're referring to, and it's got nothing to do with Constantine. But anyway, go ahead, Jordan, if you have anything that you'd like to answer on that.
Well, I don't. There's a lot of unanswered questions about that period of time in Rome with its laws. Mm-hmm. We know that Roman law was very, very difficult. There's a very harsh reality. Rome's laws were very harsh and cruel. Right. And so one of the biggest maxims of Roman law, one of the biggest bases for Roman law was one of the maxims of Roman law in the ancient Roman Empire said, "For he who would be deceived, let him." So Roman law basically meant if you're so ignorant and you don't know how to read and you don't understand law and you don't understand what law is and you're just being deceived. So if you're going to be deceived, you want to be deceived. So let the person be deceived. Let them believe whatever they want, because they'll find out when they get into court. We'll straighten them out and throw them into prison. We'll straighten them out. But until then, let the people believe whatever they want about the law, because when we get them into court, we're going to teach them a lesson. So ignorance of the law is no excuse. Therefore, if you're going to be living in the empire, you might want to find out where is it getting its laws. And what are you talking about when you say law? Who wrote the law? What law?
Right. And despite the declarations of various people that claim to be experts on Roman law and its evolution, Jordan is absolutely correct when he says this is a very harsh situation, very difficult, because every time a new Caesar came to power, the laws were altered. and really profoundly a lot of times. Now, this concept of moral law was actually introduced by the Emperor Justinian, which is later on in the empire, not at this point you're talking about.
No.
So I just wanted you to know that the listener, not you, Jordan, the listener, to know. Let's see, interesting question, Eric, but the fact is that Roman law, and to talk about it in a very black and white sense, even scholars will argue over exactly what the condition of the people was versus what the law stated, and what the reality was. But this phrase, moral law, to begin with, doesn't even originate until Justinian. And this is not a Christian sense of the law at all. This is a whole other thing. Where,
that's why the judges will tell you today. If you understand the law today in America, the judges will tell you there is no justice. There's just us.
Right. And as with today's legal system, like I point out all the time on this show, there is selective enforcement.
That's
it doesn't matter necessarily what the law says, because, another word for judge or another word for God is judge. These judges do play God, and they do make the final decisions, don't they?
That's it.
And
it doesn't matter what you think the law says. It doesn't matter. The judge will decide whatever he's going to decide, and that's what the law says, period.
Exactly.
So whatever he says, that's what the law is. It's like a cop when he stops you on a motorcycle in traffic. Whatever the cop says, the law is, that's what the law is. Why? Because he's carrying a gun. Mm-hmm. And he represents a man with a gun. And the guy with the gun is telling you that this is what you did. So it doesn't matter if you look at the law books and you see there was no law broken. It doesn't matter. He's got a gun and he says that this is what you did. And therefore he decides what the law is, period.
Right. So, like I say, it's a very complex subject. Interesting question, though, and the idea about religious canon affecting what is allegedly legal or lawful, right? Mm-hmm. This is an interesting topic in and of itself, one that we certainly don't have time for tonight. But I think would be an interesting way to look at it, because, a lot of people will tell you that our laws are all based on, Judeo-Christian value systems. Well, I didn't see anything. I don't know. Maybe I missed it, Jordan. But, in the biblical text, I don't know anything about revenue generation based on the fact that you violated someone's space, even though they don't actually have ownership of it, and how you're supposed to have ownership of things. I don't know. I don't see these laws really being laid out so well in the Bible. Things that people lose their lives and lose everything they ever worked for over quite often because of taxes and let what is Caesar's be rendered unto Caesar. Okay, fine, but seems like everything is actually Caesar's at the end of the day. So
true,
including you, the
You're
listener.
Right. There's no doubt about it.
But either way, Jordan, we're almost out of time, and I think that these were relative and interesting questions. I think it was good to revisit the concept of what's actually happening in the heavens. The last question of the evening, actually, because I will enter one more, is about the fact that we are in April. So, it is at that calendar time of the year that this is being represented in a religious sense in general. And the fact is that when you're talking about the sun resting on the cross, which it does, that happens in January. That's actually last season. Why is it that we're doing this now is the direct question. Why is it that the celebration of this happens in spring, in short, if you wouldn't mind, and then after that we're going to have to close out because that's the end of 2 hours. But really, I appreciate you taking the time to do this, and please, if you could explain why it is that we're doing this seemingly an entire season late compared to when it actually happens in the heavens, so to speak.
Yeah, well, it's because that's what we humans are always like. We're always changing times, and it says there will be a time when the powers that be will change the times and change the seasons and do a lot of things that change things. But the bottom line is that if you keep in mind the basic story of Christianity in the New Testament is the war between light and darkness, between good and evil, between intelligence and stupidity. And therefore the prince of darkness is set because it gets dark at sunset. And God's Son is our risen Savior because he's the light of the world, and light saves us, both in energy and intelligence. So, but the one point I want to make real quick is that there will come a day when one of the constellations of the zodiac is ruling, and there will be a new constellation coming in. And then, like the book of Revelation says, there'll be a new heavens and a new earth. Yes, the new heavens and the new earth which are coming are going to be Aquarius, the sign of Aquarius, because the 12 apostles asked Jesus. In the scriptures, it says that 12 apostles came to Jesus and they said, we now know that you're going to die. You're going to be put to death, and we know it. Right. Where should we go when you are gone? When you've died, where are we going to go? What's going to happen to us? And Jesus said to them, and this is in the book of Luke 22:10. In the New Testament book of Luke, go to 22:10. And Jesus said to the chosen 12 apostles, he said, go into the city. After I'm dead, go into the city and you will see a man carrying a pitcher of water. Go into the house of the man with the pitcher of water. And so the house of the man with the water pitcher is the house of Aquarius, the man with the water pitcher. So it's explaining to you slowly but surely, you're beginning to see the whole story of the New Testament story of Jesus as an encoded astrological, encoded symbolic story of the heavens. That's why you ask any 8-year-old child, you believe in God? Yes. Well, where is God? He'll point out there. He's out there. Well, if he's out there, it means he's extraterrestrial. He's not from here. If he's out there, he's in the heaven. And therefore, you go out in the morning and you'll see the sun. And where is the sun? At noon, it's up in heaven. So God's Son is in heaven. So we say that when we die, when we die, we'll go into heaven with God's Son and see our family again. No, you won't be seeing your family again. They're gone, and now you're gone. The Son is still in heaven, and he represents everlasting life. As long as the sun comes up, there'll be a life on the earth. Not for you, but for life on the earth. He's giving his life so that you might live.
Well, right. One last question, though, real quick here, and it's a simple one. Water carriers in the Middle East and throughout time are usually women. I do wonder if that's really meant to be a woman carrying that pitcher, or if it is a man. You have any thought on that?
Well, we know that nowhere in the Middle East ever did men carry water. All the Bible reference works and encyclopedias will tell you. Right. Men would never, ever be caught carrying a pitcher of water. That was beneath a man. He would never do that. Carrying water was a woman's job, period. It was established and it's done. A woman's job only.
Right.
So you would never see a man carrying a pitcher of water in the old days. And so that's why Jesus is telling you it's an astrological symbol. Go into the house of the man with the water pitcher. It was the house of Aquarius. Mm-hmm. And so the point I was going to make before was very simple. I want to throw this in real quick.
Sure. That
there will come a day, I don't know exactly when it is, no man knows the day or the hour except the Father in heaven.
Right.
But nobody knows the day or the hour, but there will come a day, it will come, when it will officially be the last and final day of the age of Pisces. And the next morning, it will be the beginning of the age of Aquarius. So there will come a particular last day of the constellation, of one constellation, and the next day will begin a new 2,150-year period of a new constellation for the sun. And so on that particular day will be the last Passover. And therefore the last Passover will be the last time the sun officially passes over the equator and the Jews have their last Passover meal. The last Passover meal is called the Last Supper. This is why you have Jesus there with his 12 apostles in the Last Supper. The Last Supper is the last official day of the Passover. When the sun has passed over the equator, has also passed over the constellation of Pisces, and now tomorrow will officially begin the new age of Aquarius. So there will be a day when it's going to be officially over and done, and that's the last Passover meal, the Last Supper.
Right.
That's where it comes from. So we'll continue this. We have to continue this whole subject next week.
Absolutely, we will. And do want to thank you again, Jordan, for doing this with me. Of course, I thank you guys for listening, and do encourage you to visit JordanMaxwellShow.com. Again, that is the only website that is Jordan Maxwell's, and you can join the Research Society over there, get deeper into this subject as well as many others. By the way, you can just email Jordan too, or make a donation to his well-being directly, because that's the only website that Jordan Maxwell is behind. That's it. A lot of other places have his name involved in it. A lot of other places try and use him to make money, to attract web traffic, whatever it is they're using it for. But the fact is that the only website that is Jordan Maxwell's is JordanMaxwellShow.com. And, of course, I appreciate the fact that you've continued on this particular subject with me here at Ochelli.com, which is my website. But anyway, I didn't want to mention it too many times. JordanMaxwellShow.com is the place I want you to go to, because you already knew how to find me. You're listening to me right now. Anyway, we're all done with this particular Moon Day or Monday's episode of Special Dogmatic Theology with Jordan Maxwell. And no matter who you are, where you are, remember this: I am merely Ochelli. All of you are actually the effect. Good night.